Well, howdy, folks. Coming to you from the office this time around. Thought I'd do a little collection video, and I've been kind of going through some of my old stuff, and just taking a look at some of the things that I did, and I did a top 25 my favorite movies of all time. I originally thought about revising that and doing like a top 50 movies, and then I thought, wait a minute, there's several other things you could do here instead of just uh, repeat a video and do it that way. But so what I decided to do is do a category collection video, and rather than sit in my chair and talk about it and in the living room and do a K-Dog Goes to the Movies, and I think because everybody's kind of movied out right now with the pandemic that's gone on, and there's several people just they're tired of Netflix, they're tired of their TV screens basically. But I thought I'd share some of my personal favorite movies. That's why I wanted to do it. But this one is going to be my top 15 animated movies of all time. These are my top favorite 15 animated movies. Now, if your favorite movie doesn't make this list, good, please, don't feel angry that your movie doesn't make my list, because my list is going to be different from your list. And so, again, like, we all have our favorite movies, we all have our favorite music, we all have, favorite color, okay? Favorite color, favorite foods, whatever. And but these are my top 15 favorite animated movies. Looking through this, the bulk of it is Disney, but there's some other company films in here as well. So we're going to start off with number 15, a film from 1987. Of course, I grew up with the 80s version of this particular cartoon, and it has, within the last 20 years, has been revised for modern audiences through live-action movies and whatnot, and new cartoon series. What am I talking about? The Chipmunk Adventure from 1987. Yes, this is one of my favorite ones. I loved when this came out to home video. It was one of those things. I never owned it on video, but I always rented it constantly. And it even has great music in it. And of course, this was from the 80s era, in which the Chipmunks did a lot of contemporary music, like music from like Madonna and Michael Jackson, and several pop stars of the time, rather than, as opposed to the version that came out in the 60s, which was more specifically children's music, and it was singing like traditional children's music, exactly. But this was like they were singing pop songs like Wooly Bully. There's also some original songs in here, like The Girls of Rock and Roll. Yeah, that was one of the more famous songs that came out of this movie. But yeah, number 15, The Chipmunk Adventure. Number 14, this one's from 1973. This was when I really started to get into Disney movies. I don't know why I particularly like this one. This actually came at a period when Disney was going through, this was like one of the first movies post Walt dying. It was one of the earlier movies in the Bronze Age of animation. In case you don't know what that is, go look up the different types of Disney animation eras. Yeah, just Google that and you'll see like the different stages of Disney animation. Well, it's from 1973. It's Disney's Robin Hood. I always enjoyed this one. It was kind of, it's a fun, goofy movie. um, and it was just really fun. It was fun for me at the time. Um, telling the story of Robin Hood through anthropomorphic characters, like Robin Hood is a fox, Little John's a bear, and Prince John's a lion. He's kind of a cowardly lion, but yeah, Robin Hood. Number 13, this one came out in 1998 and this one's kind of been forgotten about. It's not really one of, you see it now and again. It's always available, but it's kind of one that's not talked about anymore. It's one that it was a big animated hit back in its day. But it's 1998's The Prince of Egypt. Yeah, with Val Kilmer and Ray Fiennes voicing Moses and Ramses. Michelle Pfeiffer's in here. Sandra Bullock. It's an all-star cast voicing the characters, and they're telling the story of Moses. Yeah, The Prince of Egypt. Number 12. This was one I saw when I was in 2nd grade because we ended up reading the original book to this movie, and in around 2005, 2006, Paramount did a live-action adaptation of this, but I avoided that one and stuck with this one. I've watched it multiple times. Watched it multiple times when I was a kid, and it's Charlotte's Web, which was produced by Hanna-Barbera back in also in 1972 is what it says here. Yeah, it's Charlotte's Web, and this one also had kind of an all-star cast for at the time. Like Debbie Reynolds was the voice of Charlotte. Paul Lynde was Templeton the Rat. Henry Gibson was Wilbur. Yeah, it was just all kinds of people was in that film. Number 11. This film was the second movie I saw in the theater. Yes, this was number 2 in terms of me being alive, being able to go and see a movie in a movie theater. Unfortunately, the first one's not on my top 15 list. It's probably number 16. We'll make that as an honorable mention. It's number 16 would be Bambi. That would be the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater. But this was number 2. My aunt took me to see this in 1988 when it originally played. It is Oliver and Company. Yeah. And this is another one that kind of gets shoved off to the side. This was the movie that kind of turned things around for Disney. It was like at the turning point because at the time this movie came out, Disney animation was dead. It was really, really bad. Matter of fact, the movie that they made, or 2 movies that they made before this, was The Black Cauldron, and The Black Cauldron bombed so bad at the box office that it was beaten out by the Care Bears movie. Let that sink in. But yeah, Oliver and Company, I guess they wanted to do something that was way more contemporary in its style, and so it's, again, through its anthropomorphic characters. It's told through animals, and yeah, and so forth. It's a story of Oliver Twist, and of course it's set in a contemporary setting, which is modern day 1988 New York, with 1988 pop singers doing the music and the voices. So you have Billy Joel as the voice of Dodger. You have Ruth Poiter as the voice of Rita. She's right there. And Huey Lewis and Bette Midler are also voices in the film. A young Joey Lawrence is the voice of Oliver. Um, Cheech Marin, Tito. Yeah, and this was a movie that kind of turned things around for Disney. It was kind of the turning point where things looked positive. It actually made some money for them that they could go on to do a film that we'll talk about a little bit later. Number 10 from when was this? I'm trying to look at when it came out. I think this was 2004. Anyway, it's The Incredibles. Isn't that bad? I can't remember when this came out, but yeah, I saw this. I actually saw this after it had come out to DVD. We were in a small group at my college, and we had rented it for our movie night, and then we watched The Incredibles. And man, did we have a blast watching this movie! And yeah, it's one of my favorite Pixar movies. Um, yeah, and finally they did come out with a sequel, but it took a long time. And after all these other Pixar franchises that get sequels, this one they waited the longest to do. I mean, come on. But yeah, The Incredibles. It was a fun movie. Great. Just overall great movie, and funny, action packed. Oh, a very loud movie. Because we had a surround sound hooked up, and the subwoofer was cranked up quite loudly. Number 9. I saw this one in the theater when it came for a re-release. I was not alive during the original release. Neither was my parents. And it's 1940s Pinocchio. Yeah, it came to theaters in 1993 for a re-release. And of course, I think this is a brilliant, brilliant movie. It kind of, how do I want to say it? It kind of set the way animated movies should look, and this was the runner-up after Snow White. So Snow White was number 1. Originally, it was supposed to be Bambi, but Bambi had some problems, had some production problems, so it got pushed back, and so Pinocchio got the number 2. And this is a movie, just how what they did with it, being a new medium in animation and telling the story, and all the techniques that were used to create, this film. It's amazing, and yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's now on the list to getting remade as a live-action movie. But I saw who the director was, and we'll see what happens. So, with Robert Zemeckis as the director, we'll see what happens, because there's only maybe one movie I've really been disappointed in Robert Zemeckis in, but I pretty much enjoy his movies for the most part. Next up, I believe this is number 8. Number 8. I have to count everyone because I get rambling. Now, this one we're straying away from the Disney Pixar for a little bit. It's matter of fact, these next 2 movies are by the same director. This is by Don Bluth. In case you don't know who Don Bluth was a former animator at Disney who left in the early 1980s. Actually, around 1979, I believe, on his 42nd birthday, to form his own animation studio because he was so displeased with Disney at the time that he said, let's go off and make our own movie. And so he went off and made a movie called The Secret of NIMH. Came out with rave reviews. Was not a huge hit, but was definitely, made some heads turn in the industry of, there's another animated guy on the planet. So, but this was his first collaboration with Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg hired Don Bluth after seeing The Secret of NIMH to do another story about a mouse and telling about immigrating to America. It is An American Tail. The original. I did like American Tail 5 Goes West at the time, but that movie just doesn't hold up. But this one, yes. It's brilliantly animated. It has the song Somewhere Out There, which got played at a ton of weddings. And yeah, it's become one of those, it's become a classic movie. I wish it would get better treatment when it comes to like home video releases. Yeah, they did put it out on Blu-ray, but there is no bonus features on that thing. Look, just theatrical trailer and a sing-along. But yeah, that's it. But yeah, An American Tail. I watched this quite a bit when I was a young kid. And number 17, another honorable mention, would be The Land Before Time. But I wanted to keep this list kind of short, and so, with 15. Yeah, American Tail, the original. And this is probably one of the saddest movies ever made. That and The Land Before Time, because it's about, you have the main character being lost in a big world, and they have to fight for themselves, and yeah, it's just, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. The next one up, again, also directed by Don Bluth, and this is number 7. It is All Dogs Go to Heaven. Now, this was after Don Bluth was collaborating with Steven Spielberg. It was originally supposed to be 3 films that they collaborated on. This was going to be the 3rd one, but because of communication and emotional breakdowns between Bluth and Spielberg, they decided to part ways, and so he had to go through another way to finance All Dogs Go to Heaven. He found a company called Goldcrest out of the UK to finance the film, and it was released here by United Artists MGM. And this film, when it came out, I played this one. Seemed like every day. It seemed like every day this film got played in especially my grandmother's VCR. Yeah, I drove my family nuts with this movie. It doesn't really have any memorable songs. There's really nothing really significant that stands out in this movie, but it has great animation. It's It's one of those movies that's advertised for two kids, four kids, um, but it has a little bit of moral discussion about it. Even though Don Bluth is a Mormon, I looked that up. He's a Mormon, but it does deal with heaven and hell, and some serious stuff, and life and death, and which does go on, and that's a subject that's tackled in this film, and but even though there's the debate, of whether animals go to heaven or not, but humans do. Humans go to heaven or hell. I mean, there's no debate about that. You can debate about it, but I'm not even going to go there. Okay. Um, but yeah, there's that discussion. What happens to your family members when they pass away, and so yeah, there's All Dogs Go to Heaven. I just liked it for its mood, even though there is some dark stuff in this film, because there is a depiction of hell. Um, but yeah, it's a it was, for me, it was a good film, but I drove my family crazy because I played it all the time when it came out. Number 6. Saw this one when it originally came out, 1993. Actually saw it at a drive-in, which is coming back. I'm sure Joe Bob Briggs is pretty happy about that. To see this resurgence of the drive-in. But yeah, in 1993, my family, we all loaded up in our minivan and drove to Muncie, Indiana, where there was a nearby drive-in theater, and we watched this classic from Walt Disney, Aladdin. Yeah, saw this at the drive-in, and when it came out on video, we wore the tape out pretty much, and mainly we watched it for this guy right here, the genie. And we all knew it was Robin Williams at the time, but we had no idea that this actually caused a problem with Robin Williams. There were some political things going on behind the scenes. He was happy to do the role. He was proud of the work that he'd done. But what happened was he did it for like a base rate pay thing. Because he knew that Disney did not have a lot of money at their disposal to spend on big movie stars. Because if you go back and you look at the Disney Renaissance era, the voices that they got were mainly either people who were not known necessarily for movie work. They were more known for either music or television or even Broadway work, not necessarily the movies. But so Robin Williams comes along and it kind of changes the game a little bit. And so Robin Williams does it for a base rate pay. But there were stipulations with that, and which means that the genie could not be the central character. And when the advertising started coming out, when the official poster came out, what's the biggest character that you see on the poster? The genie. And yeah, the genie took up 1/3 of the poster in the original theatrical poster. Yeah, Robin Williams saw that and was not happy. And that was, yeah, it created some tension between him and Disney. But what followed was Disney learned their lesson, and that now they have to give credit where credit is due. But Aladdin itself, as a film, we loved it. We thought it was the stuff with Robin Williams as the genie was hilarious, even though we didn't always get what he was referencing. Unfortunately, maybe the Jack Nicholson stuff, but we didn't get like the Rodney Dangerfield or the like we got the Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff, but there's like that's just three references that we're talking about. He does a smattering of others, and the Robin Williams was kind of like the genie himself, that he could do all this stuff. And so, yeah, Aladdin from 1993. Number 5. This one I did not see in the theater. I saw it on home video many, many times through other people, or then when it had a re-release in 96, we ended up purchasing it. It is the 1989 classic, The Little Mermaid. Yes. Now you're thinking, why do I have The Little Mermaid and like this? I gotta tell you, this, out of all the Disney Renaissance movies, this movie I think has my favorite score in it. I love the score that was used, that Alan Menken came up with, and it was the first time that he'd ever done a movie score. I just love that, singing that Part of Your World instrumental that happens. And yeah, and just, this was, again, like with the voice actors, you did not know who Jodie Benson was. No one really knew who she was until now. I mean, she was this Broadway singing girl, and because all these people that are pretty much in this movie came from, again, either television or Broadway. And so, yeah, and you don't, because you're not, that was the point, is that you don't really look at who the voice is. You're looking at the character, and you're believing, well, that's Ariel, that's Flounder, and that's Ursula. And so it all just kind of disappeared. And so, yeah, it's always been one of my kind of sentimental favorites of, definitely the Disney Renaissance. And yeah, I think the music definitely is what sells me with The Little Mermaid. The Part of Your World song is so iconic, and Under the Sea, it just sticks with you long after you've watched the film. Number 4 is a film from 1967, but this one we rented several times before actually buying it, and this is one that I always enjoyed. I really enjoyed the characters, not necessarily the music a little bit, but mostly it was the characters, because of one specific character, being Baloo, the Jungle Book. Yeah. And this was the last movie that Walt Disney himself had personally touched. This was a movie that we rented constantly, and we always loved the character of the Baloo. He kind of reminded me of another family member that we had at the time, and just, yeah, it's fun to watch the Jungle Book. It's if you compare this to that was the thing with these movies. If you compare them to the original book, they're terrible adaptations. I mean, Little Mermaid's based on Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid. But, and if you look at, all the other Disney adaptations from stories, they're terrible adaptations. All they took was the basic beats that need to happen in those stories and just say, okay, but let's do it fun. The Jungle Book is a prime example of that, because if you read the original Jungle Book by Kipling, it is so downbeat and depressing. And matter of fact, Walt Disney himself told the animators or the composers, they said, "Have you ever read the Jungle Book?" They said, "Well, no, not in a long time." He said, "Good, don't read it," because he didn't want their minds polluted. And so out came this, and it does have its serious moments. Don't get me wrong, but it's a fun movie to watch, because the song "The Bare Necessities" or "I Want to Be Like You," and those those catchy little songs. And another thing that really I can't talk. Another thing why I really enjoyed that movie is because there was a Saturday morning TV show that came on at the time called Tailspin, which used characters from the Jungle Book. It used Baloo. It used Louie. Then they didn't call him King Louie. They called him Louie. They used Shere Khan, and he was the villain. So they used all of these different characters from the Jungle Book to do a Saturday morning cartoon called Tailspin, which was basically Baloo the bear is this pilot that flies up in the sky, and he's kind of a, he's Baloo, okay? So yeah, if you've got Disney Plus, look up Tailspin, and if you're a kid of the '90s, you would probably remember it. But if you're not, look up Tailspin on your Disney Plus and just watch an episode. You'll see what I'm talking about. Number 3. Now, I saw this one when it originally came out, opening weekend in 1995. And this was a big breakthrough for animation. A big breakthrough in animation, because it was the first full-length computer animated film. Toy Story. Yes, the original Toy Story. I would actually lump the whole entire series into number 4. Because I don't prefer one over the other. But, definitely Toy Story 1 holds a little bit of a favorite spot, because I was there opening weekend, which was Thanksgiving weekend 1995 when this opened up. And I was there to see it. And we had a blast with this movie. And we had a blast with all the sequels too. And again, I don't have any preferences one or the other. And I've even told people, like, especially when Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4 came out, I told people, I said, it'll make you cry. Especially 3 and 4. I don't know. Gosh, they had such a sad moment. They were like perfect closing endings, but they were so sad. But yeah, Toy Story, it definitely has that happy vibe to it. It's a buddy movie. This is just a blast. Yeah, Toy Story, number 3. Number 2. Saw this one when it originally played. Matter of fact, didn't see it until it was towards the end of its run, but I did manage to see it twice in the theater. This is my second favorite animated movie of all time. This was the first movie to win the Academy Award, or not win the Academy Award, be nominated, excuse me, for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And they kind of got some flack for it at the time, but it was the first animated movie to be nominated for Best Picture. It caused the Academy Awards to look at opening a new category, which is Best Animated Film. What film is it? Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, the tale as old as time. Possibly one of the greatest love stories ever put on film. Yeah, I would put that on. I would go that far. And there's so many references that you can make personally what the Beast stands for, and when he turns back into the human form, is that, you know, you could go for the Judeo-Christian look for, you know, it's meaning that he's a new creation. The old has died. As a matter of fact, the Beast dies. Technically, the Beast dies. Gaston killed the Beast. Gaston's not a hero. He's a villain. But he did kill the Beast. The Beast died. But when Belle says those 3 magic words before the last petal fell, everything was restored. And so, yeah, Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, I did see it in the theater when it originally played. Saw it twice and enjoyed it both times. And it's, again, with the Little Mermaid, it has such iconic music. But Little Mermaid has my favorite music in it. Beauty and the Beast, I'm not saying has bad music or whatever. It's the same exact people. But but just as an overall movie, I like this better than Little Mermaid. I think Little Mermaid has a little bit better music, though, if that makes any sense. Now, again, I'm not poo-pooing the music in here. I mean, iconic songs like "Be Our Guest," "Beauty and the Beast," and the Belle's song, you know, where they go up "Bonjour." It's just called Belle, but yeah, Beauty and the Beast from 1991. Now, this is my all-time favorite animated movie. All-time favorite animated movie. Saw it when it originally played. I was in Columbus, Ohio, visiting my aunt who was living there at the time, and we were all young kids. And she was trying to get us out of the house for a little while, and she just said, "Well, let's go see a movie." This was in 1994. And so she takes us to the nearby AMC, and we see The Lion King. You got it. Great story, great songs, great music, great storytelling, an original story at that. They just loosely based it on Bambi. They just said it's going to be Bambi in Africa. But yeah, it's a great movie. And if you'll notice that a bunch of these movies that I'm mentioning to you, a lot of them, especially the Disney ones, are getting live action remakes. They don't need them. And I did like the Beauty and the Beast one, but the Lion King, why did that need to be remade as a live action movie? Can someone explain that to me? This is the movie that I'm going to stick with, because this is the original one. I mean, the best performances in a movie. I mean, in a Disney movie. You know, forget about who the voice actors were. Again, you can take those names off, but all you're seeing is the characters. You know, you see Scar, you see Mufasa, you see Simba, and but this one did have some big names to it. You have James Earl Jones as the voice of Mufasa. Matthew Broderick was the voice of adult Simba. Jonathan Taylor Thomas was the voice of young Simba. Nala was voiced by Moira Kelly. Timon was Nathan Lane. Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, was Zazu. And then you have Whoopi Goldberg, Cheech Marin, voicing hyenas. Jeffrey Irons voicing Scar. Yeah. But you did not need to see their names on the marquee to know who who was what, because you saw those characters. They got credit where credit was due, but it was the characters that you saw, not the voice actors. So there you go. There's my top 15 favorite animated films of all time. The Lion King being number 1. The honorable mentions being The Land Before Time and Bambi. So they would probably rank, 16, 17 on the list. But, yeah. So from me to you, see you later.